She walked into the hospital long before the sun rose because that was when the world was quiet enough for her to hear her own heartbeat, a soft steady rhythm that reminded her why she chose this path, a path that demanded more from her than she ever expected yet gave her something deeper than anything she had ever known. Her name was Mira, and from childhood she had always carried a tenderness that felt like a small warm flame inside her chest. She could sense pain even in silence, she could feel sorrow even when others hid it. She did not fear the suffering of others, instead she felt drawn to it not out of curiosity but out of compassion, a desire to help even when her hands were small and her understanding even smaller. When she was only 9, her grandmother fell ill and Mira sat beside her for hours holding her hand, listening to the soft breaths slowing and breaking like gentle waves on a tired shore. She remembered how powerless she felt watching someone she loved in pain, and she promised herself that one day she would learn how to fight the things that cause such suffering, not with anger but with knowledge, tenderness, and unshakable strength. The years passed and she grew into a thoughtful young woman who studied medicine with a focus so intense the world often blurred around her. While her classmates chased deadlines and grades, she chased understanding, she chased meaning. She studied late in quiet corners of the library, surrounded by books as old as history itself. And when she finally stepped into her first hospital as a trainee, she felt a strange mixture of fear and belonging, as if she were standing at the doorway of her destiny. The hospital corridors were filled with the scent of disinfectant and the echoes of hurried footsteps, and somewhere within that chaos she felt a pull, a calling, a sense that she was exactly where she needed to be, even if she did not yet understand everything required of her. Her early years were a whirlwind of long nights, unanswered questions, and learning to steady her hands while her heart raced. She learned how to speak softly to patients who shook with fear. She learned how to comfort families who waited in cold hallways clutching their hopes tightly. She learned that medicine was not only science, it was empathy, it was humility, it was an endless ongoing fight against the fragile nature of life itself. She made mistakes, she cried in bathroom stalls, she questioned whether she was strong enough, but every morning she returned carrying the same flame inside her, refusing to let fear extinguish it. Then came the night that would change her life forever. It was winter, the sky outside was heavy with snow falling in slow soft flakes, and the hospital felt colder than usual, as if the walls themselves were bracing for something unseen. Mira began her shift like any other, greeting patients, checking charts, listening to heartbeats that echoed faintly through her stethoscope. But then the emergency doors burst open and the world tilted. A bus accident had happened on the highway, and within minutes stretchers began to fill the halls, cries echoed through the corridors, and the air grew thick with urgency. Mira rushed forward without hesitation. She was no longer a student, no longer a quiet girl. She became a force of nature, moving with speed, purpose, and a calm she did not even know she possessed. Blood stained her gloves, the metallic scent mixing with fear, but her mind did not panic. She moved from one patient to another, assessing, stabilizing, fighting back the chaos with every steady breath. She reached a young boy barely conscious, his breathing shallow like a flickering light about to fade. She knelt beside him, her voice gentle like a mother calming a storm. She pressed her hands against his wounds, applying pressure, whispering, "You are safe, I am here, stay with me, stay with me." And somehow he did, perhaps drawn by the anchor of her calm presence or the warmth in her. He was not alone. She worked for hours without looking at her own exhaustion, and when one of the senior doctors collapsed from fatigue, she stepped in, taking over, leading the team, guiding younger staff, her movements becoming instinct carved into her through years of sacrifice. By dawn the crisis had settled and the snow outside had stopped falling, leaving the world wrapped in a silent white blanket. Mira finally took off her gloves and saw her own hands shaking, yet inside she felt steady, grounded. She had held the line between life and death, and she had not let go. But her journey did not end there, because every day after that brought new challenges, new tests, new battles. She learned that being a doctor was not about heroism. It was about endurance. It was about standing in the darkest rooms and becoming the light. Months later another storm came, but this time it was not snow, it was a virus that swept across cities and countries, turning fear into a shadow that followed every person into every home. People hid behind masks and locked doors, but Mira walked through the hospital entrance every morning with quiet determination, knowing she was stepping into danger yet refusing to turn away. The hallways filled with patients gasping for air, machines beeped like frantic heartbeats, and the weight of uncertainty pressed down on everyone like a heavy unspoken truth. But Mira grew stronger. She learned new procedures, she comforted patients whose families could not visit, she held their hands as they cried, whispering over and over, "You are not alone, you are not forgotten, you are safe." Sometimes she was the last face a patient saw, sometimes she was the first voice they heard when they opened their eyes again. She carried both kinds of moments carefully inside her heart, treating each memory with respect, as if they were fragile glass holding someone's story. Her own fears whispered in the quiet hours of the night. What if she brought the illness home? What if she fell sicker? She remembered her grandmother. She remembered the promise she made as a child. She remembered that healing was not just a skill, it was a calling. One evening a little girl was brought into the ward, her small chest rising unevenly, her breath short like she was chasing something she could not reach, and Mira sat beside her all night, adjusting her oxygen, stroking her hair, letting her feel a presence that radiated comfort. The girl whispered softly, "Are you going to stay with me?" And Mira answered with a warmth that filled the room, "I will stay as long as you need," and she meant it. As dawn arrived, the girl opened her eyes, breathing easier, her small hand still wrapped around Myra's fingers, and in that moment Mira felt a quiet victory, a reminder that even in a world filled with fear, hope could be rebuilt breath by breath, heartbeat by heartbeat. Her colleagues often wondered where she found her strength, but the truth was simple: she found it in the people she served, she found it in every heartbeat she saved, every tear she wiped, every suffering she eased, even for a moment. She found it in the belief that life, no matter how fragile, was worth fighting for. As time passed, the crisis slowed, the wards emptied, the masks gradually came off, the world healed, but Mira changed forever. She had walked through fire and emerged with a deeper understanding of humanity. She had learned that bravery is not loud, it is quiet, it is steady. It is the willingness to return again and again, even when your hands shake, even when your heart aches, even when the world feels uncertain. She became known not for awards or achievements, but for the way patients spoke her name with gratitude, for the way her colleagues trusted her calm, steady presence, for the way she could make even the heaviest moments feel just a little lighter. Years later, she stood outside the hospital in the warm glow of evening, watching hope in their hands, and she felt tears fill her eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming realization that she had become exactly who she once needed. As a little girl, she had become the one who could stand beside suffering without fear, the one who could lift others when they felt they were falling, the one who dared to care so deeply that it changed lives. And in the quiet moments when she walked down the halls at night, she would pause by the windows, looking out at the city lights shimmering like a field of stars, and she felt that same small warm flame inside her, still alive, still bright, still guiding her. She had not saved the whole world, but she had saved pieces of it, piece by piece, life by life, heartbeat by heartbeat, and that was enough. Because Mira had learned that a healer is not someone who fixes everything, a healer is someone who refuses to turn away from pain, someone who steps into the darkness and brings light, someone who shows up with tenderness when the world grows cold, someone who reminds us all that even in the deepest night we are never truly alone. And that is who she became, a quiet, unstoppable force, a guardian of fragile moments, a protector of life, a light that never dimmed.